going back to the futility of it all, the fear is that we keep going through the motions for another year and then things still suck. And that's a very real possibility because we live in a fucked up world.
Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
Welcome to Pickles and Vodka, the podcast where one of your co-hosts is prepared and one of your co-hosts is not, and somehow that always describes both of us.
Astute observation. I'm Christina.
And I'm Lauren.
And today we have a special episode. I don't know why I said that.
We're going to teach you about drugs.
Whoa.
I was thinking of the after-school specials.
I never got those.
I never got the after-school specials, but I definitely got the, 80s, early 90s sitcoms where they did, have, a very special episode. And it's like, oh, no, someone is drinking their parents' alcohol and they're going to ruin their life and we have to stop them.
Man, I wonder what my life would have been like if I had been exposed to that.
Right?
Maybe everything would be different.
Maybe that's what solves it.
Maybe I would be a heroin addict, though.
That's true.
God, just the other day I was thinking, I am so lucky that I never got into, harder drugs because I would probably be dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I say luck, but really I just never knew anyone that did it.
No, that was me too. Because I very briefly lived with a roommate in Chicago who didn't do it all the time, but the first person I ever knew who had access to cocaine. So I did that with her a few times, and that's just kind of how I felt. So I was like, oh, this is fun every once in a while. I don't think I need to do it all the time.
I did it once, and it was in a photo booth at a bar in Austin. I was with my ex and his friend, and it hit them right away, and they went out and danced, and it didn't hit me, and I was just hanging back awkwardly. And then by the time it hit me, I wanted to dance, and they were like, oh, let's go home. No. And that's the one time I did coke.
Yeah, I'm also realized after I said that, I was like, I'm not suggesting to people, cocaine is fun, you should try it.
Let's
I'm just
be clear.
saying that. Yeah, it's just, I feel like when I did it, it was in the proper, okay setting so that I actually had a good experience. I very easily could have had a terrible experience.
Yeah, listen,
and
guys.
I'm lucky that I didn't, immediately decide I need to have it 24/7. So that's all.
Don't do drugs unless you do, and then do it safely.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. So real quick, I just happened this week to be looking at our old episodes, and I was like, just out of curiosity, what were we doing a year ago today? So when this comes out, it will be June 10th, 2024. So the most recent, the episode that we did a year ago came out on June 14th. It was number 127. Also, just out of curiosity, I was like, how many episodes have we put out between then and now? It's really embarrassing. Do you want to take a guess? There's been 52 weeks, roughly, a year.
Yeah. Well, if it's 127 and we're on 150-something?
157.
That's not bad.
That's 30 episodes we've done in a year.
That's more than half.
That's true.
You've had times, I know, where you said, you've just dropped off for 4 months straight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's good.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to talk about. So I know we've done these sorts of episodes in the past, where are they now?
Yeah.
And the reason I really wanted to talk about it was because things just could not be more different, but also a lot of stuff hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be a really interesting conversation because we've both gone through a lot of really dark shit, and we've also both grown a lot. And we obviously are both struggling still. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But first, Lauren, where are you at?
So, oh good, I have it on my notes, because I also sent you a note saying, remind me to tell you how I almost set my apartment on fire.
Yeah, so Lauren almost set her apartment on fire. Would you like to tell that story?
Yeah, I mean, it's not very long. It's basically, I got home, I think it was Wednesday night, and there was a weird kind of like the only smell I could describe it as is metallic.
Ugh, that's never good.
And I thought, that's weird. But the thing is, smells in this building travel all over. I mean, I never know when I'm going to come home and I'm going to be like, it smells like burritos in my apartment. It doesn't mean I even have a burrito in my apartment. It just means somewhere someone is making something that smells like burritos.
I'm just laughing at a burrito in my apartment, like an intruder.
I was just thinking, like, there isn't even, like, a frozen one somewhere that could somehow be like, I'm going to smell really strong, even though I'm a frozen burrito.
Malicious burrito. Describes my life.
Malicious burrito.
Sorry, not the name of the episode.
No.
Continue.
Yeah, so I come home and I smell that and, and I get the fans going and stuff like that. And I don't think about it because it's not super strong or anything. I'm just like, whatever. And it's not until I am upstairs for the night and messing around on my computer, and I always have a USB charging cable plugged in because I'm constantly charging one vape or another. So
Same.
It just lives there.
Yeah. I have like 3.
Right? And so I pick it up to charge the vape, and the end that I would plug in is melted.
Oh, fuck. Like, the end that goes into the vape or the end that goes into the computer? Or...
The end that goes into the vape.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. So, first, actually, what I noticed is my wireless mouse wasn't working. And I was like, why isn't... I just changed the batteries, and I changed the battery, and it still doesn't work. And I'm like, what the fuck? And so I, unplugged the little... God, I hate this word, dongle.
Oh, me too. It's the worst word to come out of the last century.
It is. But I unplug that, and I plug it into a different USB, and it does work. So I'm just like, okay, so one of my USB things doesn't work. And it's the one that's next to where the other one was. So I think maybe it just fried both of those.
Ooh, I'm sure that there's a reason you should not plug in both at once.
Well, I don't think there's that. It's just maybe you shouldn't just leave it plugged in a machine that's on 24/7.
Yeah. Also, I've recently learned you should not leave your machines on 24/7. That's one thing.
Well, that's a case too.
I've been really good at shutting my computer down every night. I just want to brag a little.
Oh, maybe I'll get better at it since I almost burned my apartment down.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I saw that, and I'll send you the picture. Maybe we can put it up on our Instagram or something like that. Yes,
I'm sure everyone's dying to see
this thing. I know. And of course, with my job, my immediate thought after that was and that's why you have renter's insurance, just in case I burned my apartment down.
Yeah, fire scares the shit out of me because you can't control it once it gets going.
Yeah, well, that freaked me out. And another thing is I have this kind of mat underneath my desk chair because it's carpet upstairs, and it's not thick enough, so it doesn't really work, or the carpet's too thick, but I still have it down there, which is good because otherwise whatever sparked or anything would have just probably dripped onto the carpet.
And you could be not here.
I really would probably have... Well, I'd be here because I was gone all day while this was happening.
Oh, okay, good.
But all my stuff might not... I might be homeless.
Well, and your pets.
Yeah, and I wouldn't actually be here recording because obviously all my equipment would have burned out.
This would be a very different story.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad that didn't happen. How are you feeling today otherwise? Where's your mental health?
It's just kind of feeling like everything is futile. I think that will get addressed a lot when
I'm
we
sure
start
we
talking.
won't have anything to say about that.
No.
All right. Well, I'm actually in an okay mood today, which I don't foresee lasting. But
yeah, but you gotta take it while you can.
Yeah, exactly. The biggest thing that happened with me in the last week was that I started IOP.
Oh, yeah?
Which, for the layperson, stands for intensive outpatient treatment. It's basically... I always thought it was kind of weird that it's called intensive because it's only 3 hours a day.
It is, but at the same time, regular outpatient treatment is usually going to a therapist for an hour once a week.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, no, once I thought of it like that, then I was like, I get it. Okay.
So I'll go through this really quick. So basically, I've been seeing a psychiatrist, and I've been very honest about my Benadryl use and my weed use and my nicotine use and all that stuff. And I've been adjusting my meds with this doctor, and I feel like I'm in an okay spot now, but I still am unable to stop abusing like other substances. And like when you're doing that, your meds only work right if you're not interfering with them.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of futile.
Futile. I like that better.
Me too. It feels futile to be taking the drugs I'm supposed to be taking and then also taking other drugs that mess with those. And so he was like, I think it would be really good for you to start IOP. You go to the hospital 3 days a week for 3 hours. And it's in Virginia Beach, which is like a 30-minute drive from me through terrible traffic. And so that part has not been fun because I have a lot of anxiety with driving and traffic. I almost wish that the program lasted longer to make it worth it.
Oh, I get that, actually.
Because the 3 hours go by so fast. So basically what it is, it's just like group therapy. There's a lot of worksheets. Like there's a topic. It's kind of like the podcast, honestly. There's a different topic we address every day. And then it's just like a group discussion of that topic. So the topics that we've done since I started have been, addiction as a disease versus a choice, boundaries. I forgot what the third one was, but I think it's helping. It's still a little early to say, but it does feel good to have somewhere to go 3 days a week.
And what's funny when you were just saying that is because I did just listen to the episode from a year ago, is I remember I said something about that on the phone call because I was in treatment at the time. And I said, it was like, we've been having groups where we've been having topic discussions about things that we've talked about in episodes.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I noticed is that a year ago you were in treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, is there anything else I was going to say about IOP? I don't think so. It's just, I feel like I'm going through the motions.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to tell myself that that's not the worst place to be.
Yeah. I don't know if because I have other notes on things, but I'm just like, I guess maybe just jump right into this.
Yeah, let's jump right in.
But it's funny because also in preparation for this, I read my journal from that week to see what I was doing.
Oh, boy.
And that is kind of exactly the passage that I was going to read.
Oh, my God. Well, so let me summarize real quick what that episode was about in case people don't want to like go back and listen.
Yeah.
So Lauren was in treatment, residential treatment, and I was in a relationship with a man and we had just gotten a kitten together. And I think it was interesting that I really did consider myself in recovery. Like I make multiple references in the episode to like how great things are going and how good things are for me. And now that I look back, I'm like, wow, things were actually not good. And I was just kind of in denial about it.
Yeah, it was really interesting for me to listen to, like, having the hindsight, because that's what I was thinking as I was listening. And as I was just like, this is when she was slowly falling apart and wasn't admitting it yet. Yeah.
Okay, so that's basically, that's all I wanted to set up.
Okay.
So you were in treatment. Do you want to read the journal entry that you wrote at that time?
So I actually have two to read, and I think that the first one would be kind of follow up what we were saying.
Okay, cool.
And I wrote this on June 6th. Okay. So why did I decide to come here? Is it because some part of me really thinks there's a life for me that doesn't include all this? I honestly find that pretty hard to believe. But maybe some little subconscious part grabbed the wheel in making this decision. Basically, even as I'm going through the process, I'm not believing there is a life for me without the disorder, without all the thoughts. But I do believe there could be a life for me where I follow the rules. To me right now, this means convincingly faking it. But maybe do that enough and it would end up being true. I can't see that either, so it's back to the question of why I came. I felt stuck with literally nowhere to go except down. And I can't say how much longer that could have lasted.
Wow. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Exactly. That's what you were saying. I was like, that sounds exactly what I wrote.
So now that it has been a year, well, first of all, we kind of have already talked about this ad nauseum, but do you consider yourself like in recovery? Or like, have you considered I don't know. I don't want to like just rehash what we've already said.
Yeah.
But when you wrote that up, I almost said when you wrote that episode, when you wrote that entry, it sounds like you were definitely not considering yourself in recovery. You were just going through the motions. But like through the lens of our current selves, I feel like that is a necessary step in recovery.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to feel like doing these things right away. Like, especially if you've been doing the maladaptive coping mechanisms for years and years, like when you first enter treatment or recovery or whatever you want to call it, it is going to feel like you're going through the motions, and that's normal. Like, I really want to hammer that home for myself.
And I think that's like what's been kind of frustrating right now is realizing and feeling, the futility of it all, is because it does still feel the same, that it's just like, that's kind of like the futility that I'm feeling now, is because it just does still seem to be like, I feel like going through treatment and everything maybe got me to that point where it's like, okay, I know like basic thoughts and things like that really haven't changed if I think about it, but I am willing to give it a try and fake it and see what works. And now it just feels like, well, I thought maybe that the mind would follow eventually, but I just kind of feel like I'm still like, I'm willing to keep faking it.
Well, what's coming to mind for me is that statistic that people always tell you, like, for, oh God, what is it?
I know what you're trying to come up with. Yeah.
For every, like, let's say you've been in your eating disorder for 10 years. Oh God, I don't want to fuck this up.
I was thinking of the thirds rule, where it was like a third of people will like completely recover, again, whatever that means for you, but basically be satisfied with it. A third will basically recover enough that they can, live a life and not be in and out of treatment and crap like that, but it's still always like kind of there. And a third will not at all.
And as we know, anorexia has the highest mortality rate of any mental illness.
Yes.
So nothing to sneeze at. Like, as much as we hate things like that, like, I don't know, when I hear those statistics, I'm like, well, how would you know? Like, what constitutes recovery anyway? Like, you're just discouraging people. But also, we can't ignore statistics like that either. Take it with a grain of salt, I suppose. You know what? It's kind of like when you're in a long relationship and then you break up. It's like it usually takes like a portion of the time you were together to get over it, whatever that means. So I think it's kind of similar with eating disorders. Like, however long you were in the eating disorder, you're going to have to expect to spend like a portion of that time just getting to the point where you feeling like you're not going through the motions.
Yeah, no, I actually, that is one I heard as well, because when I had, like the most like serious long-term relationship that I had, someone told me that to make me feel better. I think about like not getting over it, fast enough.
Yeah.
And it basically, it was a statistic saying that on average, it takes you, like people that get divorced, it takes you half the time that you were married to completely get over it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're trying to say is, if you've spent decades having an eating disorder, it might take years.
Yeah.
And years, which is really discouraging.
Exactly. Because you go in feeling like a little better, and I'm able to do things and, put things into my life that maybe I couldn't before. But it's all still just there in the back of my mind and everything. And at first you go in and it's exciting because it's like, but look at what I'm doing and look at what I'm accomplishing, and that's fun. And then, after a couple of years of it just being at that stasis, it's like, okay, but when do I get the rest? Yeah,
and it might be never. So podcast over. Goodbye.
Bye. Good luck.
Well, no, I mean, God, it was my intention to like make you feel valid and hopeful, but now I just feel depressed again.
Oh no.
But like, don't be discouraged if you're still a year in and you're feeling like everything is futile.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, and when we were talking on the phone in that episode, so the episode from a year ago, it started out with me kind of giving an update. And then we jumped to a phone call with you in treatment. And I noticed like I was trying to ask all the right questions and play therapist. And I was like, now that you have been in treatment for a while, do you notice that you're able to focus your attention on other things, like things that you enjoy? And when I hear that, I'm like, man, you're so naive.
Aw.
Because you don't just simply switch over like that, you know?
Yeah. But I think I even said on that call, or maybe it's just something else I heard me saying recently, that I mentioned my first time going through, that I read my journals from that and was all like, I totally drank the Kool-Aid. Look at me working on recovery. Yay.
Yeah, it's tricky.
And I knew that I didn't feel that way then, that I always have, just kind of like, I don't know, maybe this will help, I'll try. And so reading those was like, was I lying to myself the whole time?
Yeah, so I have some questions for both of us. I want to keep us on track. I wanted to save these questions for the end, but we should just ask them now and then like spend the episode kind of talking about it.
Okay.
So the questions are, what is the same? What is different? What did we learn? What are we still learning? And then I think at the end, we should have some fun and talk about predictions for the next year.
Okay.
So I guess we can start with like, what is the same since that episode, which we kind of already did. Like, you're still kind of feeling like you're going through the motions. For me, I think I was in denial about how bad things were and how, like, I was on the verge of a complete mental breakdown and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
I was even talking about the urge to drink back then.
I know.
I made a joke about it. I was like, Mom, if you're listening, don't worry about me, or maybe do worry about me.
I wrote that down in my notes. I wrote that quote. I was like, Mom, don't worry about me. And then I just wrote, or do.
Or do. Everyone should be worried about us all the time. But, like, I think what's the same is that, like, obviously I'm still struggling, but what's different is that I think I'm way more, I take it more seriously now. Like, back then I was so in denial. I didn't want to be struggling, and I didn't want to admit that I was essentially disabled, which I think I was starting to validate it, but also I was still fighting it so hard. I wrote down a quote, my brain is inventing ways for me to struggle.
That's probably because right after that, that quote about Mom, don't worry about me, you must have said something that I wrote down about saying growth leads to self-sabotage.
Ooh.
And I felt that so much. I was like, oh, yes, I know that feeling well, too well.
Well, yeah. What is your experience with growth leading to self-sabotage? In this context.
Yeah, that it feels like once something starts feeling better, or maybe you start working on something and seeing some positive results, it's almost like with us having struggled for so long that it's unfamiliar and that's scary. And it's like, oh, wait, but then who am I if I'm not struggling? Yeah,
that's the piece I'm really struggling with now. Because back then, the fact that I thought that I was growing so much, but really, I think I was lying to myself about a lot of things. I was lying to myself about how good my situation was. I was lying to myself about being depressed and being in recovery. I mean, I had just celebrated my 4-year sober anniversary when we recorded that. And actually just a few weeks ago, it would have been 5 years. And of course, I relapsed in January. So that's like the biggest oof moment I had.
Well, I was just thinking it's interesting that you were saying last year at this time, like all of these things signify like all this growth in you. And I feel like where the true growth came is a few months later when you admitted that nothing was working.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I think growth does not always look like doing well on the outside. Yeah.
Yes.
I would argue that I've experienced even more growth since breaking down, even through breaking down. And same with you. I mean, you had to break down essentially to get yourself to go to residential treatment. Like, it took you months just to be able to go to treatment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I'd said it was over a year, more than an entire year that my dietitian was on my butt.
And that just drives home the point that these things take so much fucking time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one does not simply recover overnight. Like, just going to treatment doesn't fix things. And that's an unfortunate reality because we want it to fix things so bad.
Yeah, but I feel like in order for most people to come out of treatment, quote unquote, fixed, it'd have to be a situation where you could be there for like 2 years to work through everything. And that's not possible for most people.
Man, that would be nice though.
I know.
Well, it would and it wouldn't.
Yeah, it would be nice, I feel like, to be spit out into the world feeling like totally confident, like I've really worked through everything.
But also part of recovery is like the first stage might be being in treatment for weeks, months. Like maybe there are people who've been in treatment for years, you know? Certainly we're not the most severe cases.
Yeah.
But then the next stage has to be, you know, exposure in the real world. And that's the stage where a lot of people do struggle. I don't want to say relapse, because go listen to our episode about unpopular recovery opinions with Orion. We talk about that extensively. Also, Orion's birthday was yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday, Orion.
Happy birthday, Orion. We love you.
Yeah, I think that's where I feel sometimes like I wish that it was possible to stay in some sort of treatment setting longer, like not in a residential setting, like more like in the middle, you know, like a PHP or something where you are exposed to the real world. And like I wish you could continue to get like all of that extra help and time while you are navigating the real world for longer.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Like the residential setting, I think it only helps so much. And then this is kind of a hot take. I might get some flack for this, but I feel like at a certain point, you're just like sheltering yourself from the inevitable, which is like returning to your life. Like, I think it can only do so much good.
I totally agree with you. I feel like the purpose of the residential point is to get you like you go there because you are not capable of being in the world. And a lot of times that is physical, not necessarily weight.
Exactly.
Like there's a lot of physical repercussions, you know, and it's to get you like physically okay functioning and, you know, or if like mentally you are just so off the rails, it's to at least get it to a point where you can, continue to work while living.
Or at least, that you want to live.
Exactly. And after that, I feel like it almost starts to do a disservice a lot of times, so.
And also, I think it's totally normal to struggle when you get out, sometimes for months, you know, like I think for me, at least, I'll stay with my personal experiences. I think when I do get out of treatment and I'm on the pink cloud, I feel like everything's great. My life has changed. And then I get back to my life and everything sucks again. That is the crucial point where I usually throw it all away. But I think if people can just stick it out a little bit, I'd say that's normal. Like if you feel discouraged and you want to throw it all away when you get out, don't give up, because that is a totally normal, maybe even necessary phase.
Yeah. I don't know if it was last episode or the one before or something that didn't get recorded, but
what are you about to reference?
Something that you said to me, which has come up in my brain a lot since you said it, which was basically, you were like, I expected you to relapse by now.
Oh, yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like that's made me feel good.
Yeah, because the odds are that we do. Like history has shown that we do. But that doesn't make all that progress moot, you know? So what else would you say is the same for you since we did that episode? Like, I know you said the futility. That's a big one. And that is something that I think, especially if you also struggle with depression, like that doesn't go away quickly.
Something else that I would say is the same, which is something that you said in the beginning. You were just kind of like talking about addictions in general and saying that like if you work at avoiding one that you have, then you always just seem to find something to replace it. I feel like that's something that I do a lot. And I was thinking how interesting it is, like some things that I don't actually consider to be an addiction to me, that they will come in. Like if I'm really working at, like say I'm really struggling with eating disorder behavior, or, there have been times where I feel like I am relying on alcohol way too much. And, like any of those, if I'm just kind of like, I am really going to work to stop, then I've noticed that what comes in a lot is what I would call the appearance of a shopping addiction. And it's funny because it's like, I don't ever feel like I have a shopping addiction. Like it only lasts like for a few nights usually, that it's just kind of like, I need something to fill this hole really quick. And, and as soon as my brain finds something else, then it's just kind of like, yeah, but that doesn't stick. I don't just like find myself in debt or anything like that. It's just kind of like, it's a quick fix. It's like, God, I need something to fill this.
Yeah, it's like you're desperately scrambling for something to fill the hole, like you said.
Yeah.
Which, that's what she said.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Janai for last week. That was a fun episode.
That was. Only in part because we all got high first.
Yeah. I am completely sober right now, I gotta say. Oh, fuck. Right. I forgot to take my meds.
Oh.
I should probably do that. What is the same for me? I mean, obviously, like, I'm still addicted. I'm still depressed. I think I still feel a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, I talked about that a lot, how inadequate I felt with the podcast in particular. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit, because now when I listen to that, I'm like, but you still put out a podcast for a year. Yeah. Well, like, we both did. And I think we should just, like, take a moment and be proud of ourselves for sticking with it for that long.
I feel like I should bow.
Bow. We're both bowing.
Yes.
Yeah, you fucking deserve a bow.
That's true. I mean, even like when you were saying earlier this episode, like, oh, it's only been 30 episodes. And I'm just like, that's 30 out of 52 weeks. My dorky number brain says 60%.
Yes. That's why I keep you around, to validate me with statistics.
Yep. But yeah, thinking like everything that we've done over this past year, it's like, dude, that's pretty good. It's more than every other week.
And also, like, not to get morbid, but there's a good chance, like, we could have died in the last year.
True.
Like, I mean, I don't know. It really scares me. Like, I don't want to think that I can get better again and then things go south so fast that I don't expect it. Like, yeah, that's the scary thing, because I really did think things were okay. I guess we should just get into, like, what things are different now, because now I think I do take my mental health a lot more seriously. Like, obviously, I've started on this path to disability. Like, I'm applying for disability, and I'm fully expecting it to take years if it ever gets resolved.
Yeah.
But I think I definitely realize what a matter of life and death, like, it actually is. And even saying that, I feel imposter syndrome. But I mean, things were really bad. And like, in a way, I think I'm still kind of downplaying the severity of things.
Yeah, and you say that it's scary to you that things could get that bad, and basically that you could be oblivious to it. Yeah. And, that like something like that could happen again. But I would counter that you've been very aware of that whole process recently. And so I think more that it is like a learning for you, and that won't happen again because now you know. Yeah. What that looks like.
And it sucks that we have to go through that to know, but that's just life. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes you just have to go through hell to realize what your baseline is for health. I don't know. So things that are going different.
Yeah.
So obviously I was with Brett and I thought everything was going great. And now I realized I was just trying so hard to play a part of what I thought my life should be. Like, I thought I should be in a serious relationship. I was trying so hard to be this, like, domestic figure. Like, we got a kitten together. And that's That makes me really sad to listen to.
Yeah.
So Brett took Owen when we broke up, and it was for the best, but I still miss him. You know, the cat, not Brett.
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't been in I don't know. I can't blame myself for being in denial. Like, we can't blame ourselves for not knowing things.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we weren't ready.
All you can do is learn from it so it doesn't happen next time.
Yeah. But also, like, a huge thing that is different for me is that, like, I quit my job.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking in that episode about having a panic attack at work, and that happened very often. And honestly, I wish I had quit sooner. Hindsight is 2020.
Right.
But, like, I'm really proud of myself for getting out of that situation, even though things are by no means perfect. It's been 6 months of being unemployed, and I feel a lot of, like, panic when I think about that.
Yeah, but I do remember being very happy for you when I heard you quit your job, because at that point I could tell I was just like, yeah, this is not doing anything good for you. So.
And for you were talking about possibly wanting to get back into music. You were talking about wanting to join your aerial class, and you're doing it now.
That is exactly what I have written down. That I actually thought was cool is you asked something about, like, what would I want to get into anything or pursue anything, and I said, like, I've always wanted to go back to aerial, and I did. And I said, yeah, and I was like, I really miss playing in a band, and I am.
Yeah, you should be really fucking proud of yourself for that.
And something else related to this question, the other little thing that I wanted to read, I felt like this fits because it's not something that has changed, but it kind of told me something that I would like to, well, maybe it's changed. Maybe it's something that I've worked at, I'd say, but it's something I'd like to work at more.
All right, that's a good place to be.
All right. And this one I really liked because you specifically asked me this question as well.
Ooh.
I've answered the question, are you ready for PHP? Like 5 times today.
And you wrote this when you were in residential, and PHP is like the next step down.
Yes. And this is actually written on the day we recorded. So you would be one of those 5 people that asked me that.
Oh my God. All right, go for it.
All right. I've answered the question, are you ready for PHP? Like 5 times today. And the answer every time has been, not really. But that doesn't matter because I'll be fine, right? Because I am always fine. I've made a point of not being the one to worry about. That basically is my identity. It's why my drama level here is so low. I don't involve myself with you, and you don't pay any attention to me. Simple, really. Honestly, the answer is to just spread all the bullshit out to where it's just at a manageable level. The problem with this theory is that then it pretty much has to be constant. But at least then, you're never in crisis or require any attention from anyone. What is my favorite hobby? Hiding in plain sight. Which is hard to do when I'm getting so increasingly uncomfortable in this larger body, but at very least, I can stay quiet about it.
Holy shit. We could talk about that for like the remainder of this episode.
But after reading that was my thought, is I was just like, well, and this is kind of our, like, forum. This podcast.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was just kind of like, I know we've said this, like multiple times, but it's just me kind of saying like, all right, I'm going to try and not always hide and stay quiet about it.
Yeah.
How has that worked for me?
Well, that's a really great topic because I feel like we've both grown a lot in that area. When you said your identity is being someone that people don't worry about.
Yeah.
Oh man, that hit hard because same. A year ago, I was trying so hard to live a life that like my parents were not worried about me whatsoever. Like everyone was so happy for me that I had reached this place where I was in a quote unquote stable relationship and I had a quote unquote good job. And that could be not further from the truth.
Right, but it's because you were like insisting it to the outside world. Like, yes, this is the case. They're like, okay, I believe you.
What I'm trying to say is I think we've both grown a lot in that we no longer, like, gaslight ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
Yeah, like, we know ourselves better now. Like, when we're struggling, I think we're both quicker to acknowledge it and deal with it, whatever that looks like.
Or even just admit, like, things are actually not great.
Yeah.
No matter how much I would love to pretend like they are.
And, like, it's not a bad thing for people to be worried about you. That's a big one for me.
Yeah, because even when you said it just now, I'm like, oh, that still feels uncomfortable.
Well, because you are the minimization queen.
Yes.
I can't believe we've gotten this far in the episode without saying that word.
Right.
But like, you minimize a ton, like more than me, I would say. And so through the course of this podcast, I have really seen you grow a lot in that area. Like, it makes you really uncomfortable to talk about, but you are talking about it.
Yeah, I guess that was what I was thinking about. Is like, I'm going to continue to work on that because it's been happening no matter how much it is hard.
Let people be worried about you. People aren't going to hate you for demanding so much of their time. If they do, then maybe they're not people you need to have in your life.
That did bring up something too, like thinking like, oh yeah, there is kind of that fear of just like, people are going to worry about you and then they're going to reject you. They're going to be like, I'm worried and this is too much for me.
Yeah.
So I have to back away.
But the thing is, like, in the last year, I didn't even think it was possible to get more vulnerable, but I have. Like, I ended the relationship. Like, I realized I was queer and I left that. And I went through this months of, like, relapsing, to use that word, and didn't acknowledge it or talk about it to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. Like, eventually, if you cover it up for that long, it's going to come out in the open in a really big way. And I really don't want to make that mistake again. And so I have been very vulnerable in the last year. Like, I asked for help from my parents. I took breaks from the podcast, which is a big deal. I got a therapist and I was hospitalized for a while. Like, all this stuff I look at and I'm like, man, I can't believe I let it get to that point. But also I'm proud of myself for getting to that point, if that makes sense. I started a Substack where I just post my most unhinged, like, thoughts. I don't know if I would have been doing that a year ago.
And like all of those things that you just described, I feel like, are you getting to the point of just saying, oh shit, I need help, and doing it?
Yeah. And it sounds so fucking simple, but it's not.
It's not. Yeah.
So what did we learn? I mean, we've kind of already been talking about it, but like, I don't know. I love these like reflection episodes.
Me too.
I love being like, okay, well, this is what we learned and this is what we're doing differently. But the reality is it's not that simple. But with that said, do you feel like there is something that you have taken away from the last year?
I don't feel like I can answer that any more than I already have. I will say that particular question always does give me instant anxiety to ask, like, what do you feel like you've learned? And it's just kind of like, oh, I don't know. Maybe nothing. Or if I say I've learned this and then I don't do it, then did I really learn it and I lied to you?
I think that just goes back to the imposter syndrome and feeling inadequate. Like we're supposed to be the authorities on this just because we have a podcast. Like, what a joke. That doesn't make you an authority on anything, especially in our case. I mean, I think if we're talking about things that we're still learning, that seems like a more accessible question. I think it's that, like, we don't know shit. And just because we have been dealing with this for a long time doesn't mean we're still not capable of, like, surprising ourselves in good and bad ways.
I love that you said that too, because I was just about to say, counterpoint to that, also, maybe let other people surprise you. Ooh. Like we have ideas, like we're holding so much back because we have ideas of like how it's going to go and how it's going to disappoint people and things like that. But it's just kind of like, maybe it won't. Maybe other people will surprise you in their reaction.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say earlier is like, once I did start telling people how bad it was, I have been met with nothing but support. And honestly, it's a little embarrassing to say because like, I feel bad for projecting that onto my loved ones, that they would be disappointed or angry or whatever. Like maybe expect better things from your support system.
Yeah. Or at least give them the chance.
Give them the chance.
Yeah.
Because people want to help you. Like we both have so many amazing people in our lives that want to help us. Mm-hmm. And listener, that applies to you too.
Yes, everybody does.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are some people that truly have nobody. I don't want to...
No, but I do feel like there might be people that don't know who that person is.
Yes.
And that I understand. That is very hard then, like, if you really feel like there is no one in my life. I get that.
And not everyone talks about it as much. Like, we talk about downplaying it, but the fact is we do talk about this stuff a lot more than, like, the average person, I feel like. And so I think it's important to put ourselves in the shoes of people who are new to talking about this, who are new to asking for help. Like, that's a really scary thing, and we're validating the shit out of that.
Absolutely.
But, like, take a chance. It's really scary, but
if you've never
change.
tried it, give it a try.
Yeah, give it a try. Yeah, I'm still really learning to ask for help. Like, it's a muscle that if you stop, like, flexing it for a second, I think it's so easy to lose.
Yes. Very true.
Like, asking for help is not a one-time event. I think it's something that you have. It's like vulnerability, our favorite word.
Yes.
It's a practice.
And especially for us, as we've said, we have years and years and years of not doing that.
Yeah.
So when you said it like a muscle, I'm like, yeah, it's like if you stop practicing, then your muscle memory goes back to, I don't need to ask.
Yeah.
Like that's the default. So it's like, you got to keep working to change that.
So speaking of working to change that, let's talk about our predictions for the next year and like what we are still working on, what we want to work on, what we want to happen. And I mean, I think it's also okay to talk about like our fears. Going back to the futility of it all, the fear is that we keep going through the motions for another year and then things still suck. And that's a very real possibility because we live in a fucked up world.
Yeah.
But I think as long as we're being open about it, we can't do any wrong. Like whether we're doing good or bad, like that's just human. We're going to do bad and we're going to do good, but we cannot stop talking about it. Like we can't lose that momentum.
Yeah. I would say that is my biggest fear, is that I will just continue to languish in this spot for years.
Yeah, but I don't know. The word languish is interesting because to me that's like a very passive word. Like it implies that you're just not doing any work. But I don't know if that's the case with us, with you in this example. Like even when you feel like you're languishing, I don't think you're doing nothing, just like me. Like, I feel like I'm really doing nothing right now, but I'm actually doing a lot of things. Like, I'm not languishing.
Yeah. So I would guess that would also then maybe like play into what I would work on, which is probably just continuing to do the things that have changed and are, you know, I hesitate to use this word, bringing me more joy.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's something we've been talking about in IOP is like, you cannot just take out the disorder and then expect things to go well unless you replace it with something else. And I hate hearing that.
Yeah.
Because like, it's familiar. And as fucked up as it is, it does serve its purpose. Like, we know what to expect.
Yeah. And I'm feeling like, I'd say particularly in the last couple months, there's been some stretches earlier in this year where I've just been hit with like some really bad like depression weeks or string of days or something like that. And when that happens, then, you know, like I think I talked about once that I just flat out didn't go to an aerial class once because I just felt like I couldn't. And I could see myself doing that sometimes, you know, like maybe with a band practice as well, just being like, I don't have the ability right now. And, you know, for my greater good, I have to cancel this practice. But the thing is it's fine to do that. But I think for me, I can't use that as a jumping off point of, oh, well, I guess I'm still just too like unfunctional to be dependable for these things. And I have to just give it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that goes back to like black and white thinking. That's a huge thing I'm working on, is telling myself like I'm allowed to struggle and that doesn't mean that I have to go back to where I was before. And that's really scary to practice because like in our minds, the second we dip our toe in, that's it, we're done for. I think having a lot more like self-compassion is vital.
Yes, that's always a hard one to come by, but I agree.
But yeah, filling our life with other things, it is a practice. Like, I'm trying very intentionally to see people more, like talk to people more, pour my energy into things that aren't my disorder. And it does feel like I'm going through the motions, and it doesn't feel like I'm getting anything out of it. But I think it's a really dangerous thing to rely on your feelings like that.
Yeah.
In that case, I think going through the motions could almost be a healthy thing, because it means you're not relying so hard on your feelings, which come and go.
I agree. And that's where I was thinking, like, there literally are going to be times, you know, like where maybe you make plans with someone and you are just like, I just cannot. I need to cancel. You know, like it is fine to like know yourself that well. But yeah, don't use that as a jumping off point of then like every time just being like, well, I guess I'm just like no good at social interactions, so I just won't. It's like, no, you got to force it if you can.
If you can, but also I think I'm directly contradicting what I just said, but I think going through the motions with that kind of stuff can also be bad, because it allows you to ignore the underlying issues. Like, I would say a year ago, I was totally going through the motions with my life, but my heart wasn't in it. And I knew my heart wasn't in it. I knew it was wrong, but I was just like going along with it and suppressing all of these issues. And eventually they just blew up. So in that case, going through the motions is not a good thing.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, just like if you're tempted to just like quit things, then kind of like think about your motivation. Like, is it because you're just being down on yourself? Or is it because, yeah, you are just masking?
Yeah, it's important to give yourself a break. I really, in the past, have not given myself enough breaks. Like, we're so hard on ourselves. And I think that's one thing in the next year we will both continue to work on, is just like self-compassion, seeing ourselves as human beings who don't have it all together and who are just doing the best they can. Again, in a really fucked up world.
Yeah. And with really fucked up brains.
Yeah. But like also not enabling ourselves.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
There's a fine line.
It's like, be true to yourself, but don't just be enabling.
Yeah. But I think if we both continue on the paths that we are now, like pursuing help, even if we feel like our hearts aren't in it, I really do have faith that if we continue that long enough, we will see changes for the better.
Yeah, I think what's frustrating is you can say that and you can kind of like hope in the back of your mind that it's like, and then everything will be like so measurably better in a year. It will be like freaking obvious, but it's just like, maybe it'll just be a really small hill that you're going up. And it's like, yeah, it's continuing to get a little better. Yeah,
or at least different.
Yeah.
Like maybe it won't get better, but it'll be different. And I think that signifies growth in a way.
True, because you know what the same is.
Yeah. And that has been the big theme of my life in the last few weeks. I have had so many moments of deep reflection where I'm like, I really don't want things to be like this a year from now. It's like I can see the future in these moments, and I can see myself like a year, 2 years, 10 years from now, and nothing has changed. And it's really depressing, and it is a good motivator to like keep trying new things. Because all you can do is try things. Like, not all of them are going to stick, but some of them do, like your Ariel and your music. Mm-hmm. And like this podcast is stuck. I don't know how.
I know.
And like, yeah, we still have our pets that we love. They continue to be anchors for us.
Oh my gosh, that was something, one of my very first notes, because you started off, you know, like talking about getting a new kitten and everything. I have been really focused recently on considering a second dog.
Lauren, I like how you just dropped that in at the end of the episode.
Well, I think it's because, and you know, also because maybe in March, Pico turned 10.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's ends up on my mind a lot then. It's like, oh my gosh, he's not going to be here forever. I am going to be obliterated when he's gone. So it's kind of like preparing myself for that too. But yeah, I keep thinking about that, and I keep looking at dogs and being like, would this one work?
Do you think he would like a friend?
I think I'd have to get the right one. Yeah. He is very, very territorial of me now.
I would be remiss not to mention our housing situations and how much that's changed. I mean, obviously, like, I no longer live with a partner. I have a roommate, and you...
I have a roommate, and now she's not here, and I'm trying to move out.
Yeah, so a year from now, I'll be really curious to see where we're living, who we're living with. But I don't think being anxious about it will accomplish anything.
Something else I wanted to comment on, listening to the last episode, which has nothing to do with anything we've talked about.
The sex episode, you mean?
Oh, no. The one from...
The sex episode?
The sex episode? That is what it is. That's canon now.
I love it.
No, the one from last year that we've been talking about. Yeah. Is somehow we started talking about, like, in a residential mental health treatment or anything like that, usually there's some confidentiality, and, you know, like, I used some initials because I said that's what we did, and you said they gave everyone code names.
Yeah.
And I found out after I left that I kind of had my own code name.
Oh, what was it?
Well, I mean, it's still initials, but they call everyone by initials, and my middle initials, I have two, are A and F. So, of course, I put Lauren AF on everything.
Wait, I didn't know that's why it was Lauren AF.
That's why, yes.
I thought it was just like Lauren as fuck.
Well, I mean, that's the point, is like those were already my middle initials. And then when people started using AF for everything, I'm like, that's so cool. I am Lauren AF.
You are.
I am Lauren as fuck. and yeah, so like everyone apparently loved that. And I didn't know until afterwards. That's what one of my friends that was still in residential was like, just so you know, and this was actually a nice thing too, I guess, to end on, is it's like, you had more of an effect than you think. It's like, everyone is always talking about you, and they never say LH, they all say LAF.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful.
Like, something comes up that you used to say all the time, and they'll say, I miss LAF. And I'm like, oh.
You know, that's a perfect place to end it. I think we cannot downplay the effects that we have on others. Like, that's one thing that this podcast has really shown me, that it's really humbling, like how much of an impact we have that we might not even know. And not just because we have a podcast. This applies to anyone listening. Like, people are paying attention to you, not to make you nervous, but
yeah. You might be having an effect that you don't even know about.
Yeah. And not just on others, but like on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I like these reflection episodes because I think sometimes it does take a stark contrast between like now and a year ago to realize like all the ways that we've grown. And we all need that from time to time. So listeners, I would urge you to like go back and see how you're doing a year ago, and maybe you were doing better, maybe you were doing worse. Well, I don't know. Yeah,
like if you keep a journal, go back and read it, or if you have a podcast, go back and listen to it.
Man, I wish more of our friends would start podcasts.
Me too.
Listeners, start a podcast.
Yeah, start a podcast. It's really not that hard. I knew nothing when I started.
Yeah, and you know, we still know nothing in some ways, but that's just life. None of us really know anything. All you can do is the best that you can. And everyone's changing, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's pickles and vodka.
That's pickles and vodka. That's P&V, folks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope everyone has a lovely week, and share your reflections with us. If you do go back and think about where you were a year ago, like, let us know. And let us know if you found anything relatable. Let us know if we're wrong and everything's worse.
Right. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes that's the way it has to go before it goes up again.
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard, don't forget to tell a friend about our podcast. You can direct them to picklesandvodka.substack.com, where they can find our entire archive and also get access to our chat. We're on Instagram at Pickles and Vodka Podcast, Facebook.com/picklesandvodkapodcast, and YouTube.com/@picklesandvodkapodcast. My Instagram is @xtinajumper, and Lauren is @LaurenAFH. We have a free support group every Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. Go to join.freeconferencecall.com/picklesanonymous. We'll see you next week.